Develop a fortune state of mind. Time for a date with. Time for a date with. A date with the Dorseys.
Hello, and welcome to yet another date with the Dorseys.
Yes.
I am Dr. Jatan and
Floyd Dorsey.
the fourth.
The fourth.
Together we make Dem Darn Dorseys.
Okay.
I said Dem Darn
All right,
Dorseys.
just one more time for 'em.
I said Dem Darn
That's
Dorseys.
it. Stop it. They can't handle it. It's too much. It's too much.
At some point, we're going to take it more than the 3 iterations, and we're going to drop some bars behind that thing, and it's just going to drop hot like fire.
I'm ready.
Nevertheless, you know that's my word when we're about to carry this thing on and get right to another episode of Date with the Dorseys. So thank you for tuning in again. And, you know, if this is your first time tuning in, you know I always got to greet you, show you some love, give you a virtual hug, welcome you on in this thing, and let you know what it is that you tripped up on, right? So Date with the Dorseys is all about developing a fortune state of mind. And I always start with the word developing, but, you know, it's enhancing, it's creating, it's whatever it is that meets you where you are and takes you to the next level of being the greatest you.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, we have 5 pillars that we use to illustrate, to demonstrate, to further drive those points home. And excuse me, we call those the 5 F's. And the 5 F's are family, faith, finance, fitness, and fun. Y'all know I like to sing that
Sing
part.
that fun. Yeah.
So any of the topics that you tune in and hear will be of some sort of a combination of those 5 F's. And maybe one of them, 2 of them, 3 of them, or all of them. But nevertheless, you're going to get a taste of the 5 F's in order for us to drive home the point of developing, creating, enhancing that fortune state of mind. In essence, being the best you in all aspects of those 5 F's. Now, you may think, hey, we just, y'all, they, us, them Darn Dorseys just pull those 5 F's out of the sky. No, these are actually pillars and principles that we instill in our lives, in our relationships, in our finances, in our fitness. As we stated, all the F's are a part of our life.
That's it. We live it. We think it. We choose it. We are that.
It.
Yeah.
Love that. And so, you know, just before we get into our topic for today, if you have not already liked, loved, shared, connected with us on social media, make sure that you do. We're on both Instagram and Facebook at Dem Darn Dorseys or at Date with the Dorseys. Sometimes, you know, I gotta recall what's what around here. I got an important job here to memorize all this stuff.
Okay. We'll call it that.
Okay.
It's very important.
Okay. Thank you. Clean that up real quick. Nevertheless, if you are not on social media and you like to email us any thoughts, ideas, for topics or anything of that sort, you can email us at support@fortuneenterprise.com. Again, support@fortuneenterprise.com. Fortune is spelled IVTUNE, enterprise.com.
Find us.
Ooh, Lordy, that was some work on the throat. But now it's time for the best part. And that is our topic today. So today's topic is dip, baby, dip. Dip, baby, dip. Come on now, dip. He's looking at me like, what is going on?
I have no idea on what's going on. So I'm sure many of you are with me, but we're just going to roll with it. All right?
So the topic is the dip. But when I say the dip, it makes me, Lord, I am choking today. It makes me think of the song, Dip, Baby, Dip, Come On Now. What was that song?
We got it. Yeah.
Okay,
Cotton candy, sweet.
So
We got that.
You go.
We got you.
So he is on the same page.
Yeah.
He just didn't want to come with me.
No.
He just going to leave me out there and let me, adventure on my own. Nevertheless, we are going to go right into this topic of the dip and what it is all about. And, now you're going to think of that song as we're going through this, because I really do want you to think about dipping. Now, you may not be able to drop it like it's hot anymore, but mentally think about that dip and what that feels and looks like. But in essence, Mr. Dorsey, you want to open it up about the dip?
No,
or you
so I
want
want
me
to
to
hear you. Please describe the dip, because I'm just still thinking of the Tootsie Roll and the dipping and the dancing. So I want to hear from you.
Okay.
What is this divine dip?
Well, this was inspired by a book that I recently read or listened to on audio. Nevertheless, it's written by Seth Godin, I believe. Hopefully I didn't butcher his last name. Nevertheless, the theory behind the dip is really helping you to determine whether or not a thing should be adventured. Or say, for instance, you have a goal, you have an aspiration, you have a big decision to make, and you're trying to make sure that you start this thing and you actually finish it. Or maybe you're about to start and you really want to determine whether or not it's the best thing you should do or not. And so there is always a level of start, and then you make a few steps, and there's probably going to be what we call a dip. And then there's going to be an instance where if you do dip, hopefully you come out of that dip and then eventually arrive at the goal or the ultimate thing that you were trying to achieve. Now, this dip is really the point of which the hard time comes in this experience or in this journey towards achieving that goal. And so the dip could be anything. It could be loss of a job. It could be, going completely broke. It could be being ill, whatever that drop is in that situation or that scenario that you're trying to achieve. What does that look like? And determining that thing helps you further. Well, actually, let me back up. Determining that thing before you even start working towards achieving that goal helps you determine whether or not it's even a goal that you should consider. Like if I know that dip is going to happen, that particular dip, whatever it is, it could be whatever I identified as an example or whatever your specific dip is. And you think about that thing, you know your ultimate goal, and now you know what the possible dips are. And you say to yourself, okay, I know these are the 5 possible dips that could happen on my journey to achieving this goal. Is it worth me experiencing those things to get to that goal?
Got you. So I really like that idea, and actually it sounded a little bit better than the song itself with the dip. So, but just to jump into on that, so this dip certainly sounds like something that should be contemplated, investigated, and analyzed prior to commencing your journey.
Yes.
And so once you take that first step, that means the journey starts.
Absolutely.
Right? And the dip would likely or could occur, or in most cases will occur, during the journey process. Mm-hmm. So what you're talking about before that dip is that planning, that we're thinking through what are all the different opportunities, the things that could go wrong, the things that could go extremely well. Mm-hmm. It's creating some form of a model within yourself just to understand what could really happen in the process of me going on this journey. So if we were to look at that and unpack it a bit and think about, use a real life example in this case, and it's just going into the planning part before we even get into the journey and defining this dip. We'll look at, for example, starting a business or buying a house. Which one would you say, Dr. J, on this one? Starting a business. So starting a business. Okay, we'll take it there from a business approach. I know buying a house would be more of a personal, non-business approach. But nonetheless, with starting a business, you may take some time before you even venture out on this journey and start your business. You really want to understand what's the cost, right, of my products, what's the cost of my marketing, what are the costs. You want to understand all of the costs, right? These are just things that you want to understand before you get started. So once you have that general idea on the cost to start your business, the potential revenues, then you would go through and say, all right, so more into scenario analysis. What are some of the worst things that could happen that could bring me to the lowest bottom? And what is that bottom? And what could get me there? Right? Mm-hmm. And then based on that, understanding that I could very well be at this bottom maybe multiple times, or maybe for an extended period of time, right? So you have to develop what's called that risk tolerance. How much of this can I tolerate, or am I willing to tolerate to get to that goal on the other side? So I see where I am today, and I see where I want to be, and then I need to understand what's the dip for me to begin this journey, right?
Or to go through
Or
it.
to go through it,
Yeah.
right? And am I willing to go through it? And is that thing that's on the other side that important, or does it mean that much to me to endure, to go through this dip that I understood or understand that could occur? And that's truly the big question. Now, some of you, in some cases, like starting a business, I may not know everything up front. So what do I do then, right? I'm glad you asked, because Dr. Jatan has the answer for you.
One of the things that you can do is widely known, but maybe not.
Google?
No.
Oh, you said widely known.
But
Okay.
not widely applied, which I would recommend is the SWOT analysis. So before you even start, like what are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, not only for you personally as you begin this journey, but also the business that you want to start. Those threats could be those things that you would identify as those potential dips. Like, these are the things that I could possibly run into that could threaten my business, threaten me being secure in the decision that I made. But what's important is that you don't start if you know that you can't make it through the dip. And I think that's the point we're really trying to drive here initially, is to do that initial assessment, which includes something like the SWOT analysis, or you just doing a data dump, right?
Yeah, and it may be a great opportunity to reach out to experts in that field, or into one particular area or another that you're looking to venture in. Who's done this before? What are some of the challenges that they have, right? How did they overcome it? And am I willing to have to sleep in my car for, I'm just throwing out an example. I hear a lot of stories of people having to sleep in their cars for months or years or whatever it may be to just achieve their goal. Now, the ones we hear on the other side actually make it. There are some that don't. Am I willing to go that far? Is that the dip for me to achieve this goal? Like, could I, if I'm mortgaging my house, could I lose my house to achieve, to start this business and to get it going? And most of the time, let's say when you're talking about business and you talk about dips, a lot of it relates to the financial aspect of it, right? I think many things come back to that almighty dollar. But there are other aspects as you think about the dip. It's the sacrifice of your time, right? How much time to do this thing, right? At the worst of the worst, I would have to give up. Would you have to give up away from your family, away from your social life, away from your friends, or whomever it may be? You may find that, hey, there's going to be months during this journey that I'd have to sacrifice and work, let's say 18 to 20-hour days for, over a period of a couple months. Just maybe that may happen because I may lose my staff. I may not have enough people to support me. With that being said, on the other side of this is the opportunity to make an extra $100 a month. Well, is that really worth it? Right? For your business, you may say, well, maybe that opportunity is to make an extra $100,000 a month. That makes it a little bit more, you build up the palate to tolerate that a little bit more. Your tolerance is there because of the reward that you're seeing. So it's that risk-reward base, from a risk-reward basis as well.
Yeah. I think that's good. I'd also like to tie this back to something other than business, but just personal, right? Even if it's personal development. If you're trying to, I know in the opening we explained that part of what we teach is about developing a fortunate state of mind. And it's not just about money in the bank, although that's key. It's about the holistic you. So if you're thinking about becoming a better you, and you know those areas of life that you're struggling in, whether it be confidence or, self-esteem, which kind of align together, but those came to mind first. But nevertheless, you're trying to think of ways to overcome that thing, right? Mm-hmm. What is it that I can do? What is that ultimate goal to get me there? And that may just be as simple as getting a coach or getting a counselor, right? But you have to think about that journey that you're going to go through had you hired a coach or a counselor, which means that you may be asked some hard questions. You may be given some hard,
it's gonna make you feel uncomfortable.
Right, introspective activities or whatever that are going to make you dig deep into places that you haven't normally dug, which could be that dip for you. Can you handle that? Well, are you willing to go through that to get to the other side of becoming a better you?
That's it. And I'd say with any dip in any scenario, whether it's business, to coaching, to personal development that you were just speaking about, or is it something as simple as buying a house, recognizing that the dip is there, it could occur, it could be worse, right? It could be pretty bad. The question that you have to make, one of which is, am I willing to go through it? Yes. You say, yes, I'm willing to go through that to get to where I want to be. Okay, great. But see, the dip is not necessarily always a bad thing, as long as, because they're going to be in any journey that's worth achieving and going through, those dips will be there, right? Especially if the reward is greater enough. The bigger question is, now that you know that the dip is going to be there, is what are you going to do about it? How do you prepare for it, right? If it's financial, should I cut back on some other things so that I can make sure that I have enough financial reserve in place in the event that I have to go through and endured a long period of time in my dip, right? Or if it's emotional, well, maybe I do need to take some more time and desensitize myself so that I'm more prepared to deal with more candid, direct, tough conversations. It's making sure you have the toolkits and the tools around you before you get started, after you recognize that the dip is there and it's a probability that you would experience it.
Right. One other point that was, I won't say highlighted in the book, but that stuck out to me,
sure,
was that you don't start if you can't be the best, and the best equates to making it through the dip. So if you think about that, if you cannot make it through the dip, then you're likely not going to be the best at or the best through the journey to get to whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. Because only the best can fight through the worst of the journey and really get that true experience to come out of this thing like, man.
So it's like some purging, refining, and all that's going on. Yes. Right? It's only going to bring out the best of you.
Right. Kind of like they say, best lessons are the bought lessons. That, you cherish things more when you actually put in the work behind it to get it. Wow. So it's a little different when you go through that fire to get whatever it is at the end.
I know I was contemplating, I'm sure you did, when even just going back to get an MBA, and I'm sure many, I know you as well did, again, when you were looking at going to get your doctorate, and I'm sure many people are making that decision as they look to, just in something as your education, if you want to take, another level, explore another field, even switch gears altogether, right? You may have a medical doctor now, you want to be an attorney or something, you want to get your law degree. And those are some of the questions, right, that you have to be able to answer. And one is that considering, is it really worth it, and can I endure that dip? And to your point, it's truly a refining process, and you have to be clear on what you want, how you're going to get there, and making sure you have the right tools in your toolkit to help you out along the way.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point, and it ignited another thought for me when you're talking about obtaining a degree. I recall the day that I was about to walk the stage achieving my doctoral degree, there were some ladies that were behind the curtains or whatever before we actually came out on the stage that approached me, and they were like, congratulations, welcome to the 2%. And I'm like, the 2%? Wow. Nevertheless, in the end, hindsight, I realized that their point was that not many people make it to that point of where they actually graduate and obtain their doctoral degrees. Now, the statistics have changed, but it's still not that significant of an amount of people that actually start a doctoral program and complete it.
So it's many not 2% that has a 2% with a doctoral degree. It's 2% that start the journey and actually complete
complete it. And here's the part. Here's the dip. After I'm acquainting myself with this book, I was thinking of this process as I was listening to the breakdown of this theory or this methodology. But the dip in that experience is the dissertation. Because for most, you can find that the coursework or even the residencies are tolerable. But you get to this dissertation, which is like writing a book that you have to defend, that could add more time to you obtaining this degree, whereas you may have gone into it thinking, oh, this is a 4-year degree. You start this dissertation, and it could take you into another year, another 2 years, or however long you take to achieve that thing, to get to the point that you just mentioned, defending it and getting it approved. Many tend to drop off right at that point and become ABD, which is all but dissertation. And so therefore, that to me, in that instance of obtaining a doctoral degree, is the dip. So if you assess the full experience, the full journey of obtaining a doctoral degree before you jump in and realize, oh, I have to do a dissertation. Okay, what does that really mean?
That's it. I didn't realize all that.
Right.
And maybe you should have reached out to somebody who's achieved that before, just so that you can fully understand the depth and breadth to the work that's involved with that.
Exactly. But many don't really either take it seriously or do that due diligence to research and connect with other people to find out what that truly means and how that would impact them, and just jump right in. Let me pay my tuition and get this thing going.
That's another part, right?
What?
Is to pay the cost of that. Right?
Of course. All of that is a dip. Part of the dip.
That's a part of that dip. Now you look up like, wow, it's an extra 70, 80, whatever, 90, $100,000 that I'm going to have to shell out and come up with. And oh yeah, by the way, my company is not going to pay for it. So I have to figure all this in to make that determination, is it truly worth it?
Right. So I think those dips are great examples of, and then the way that I illustrated it being that you didn't do your due diligence ahead of time, but you get to this point in that journey where the dip is hitting you, and now it's a panic mode, and you're having to, in the moment, decide, am I going to quit or am I going to keep going? But had you done what we talked about earlier, the SWOT analysis or connecting with other people who have been there, done this, then you would have been more prepared to make the decision of whether or not I should continue or not. Rather than waiting until you get to stop. Rather than waiting until you get to or through or in the thick of the fire and say, now I have to panic. Oh my goodness, I don't have the money to pay the rest of the tuition. Oh my goodness, I don't have the wherewithal, the time to do this dissertation. Now I gotta quit.
I have to work a full-time job. I have children. Yes. I have a family. I have to do this. All those things come up.
And who wants to make a panicked decision?
That's
right?
it.
A rushed decision.
Agreed. So now, I guess the question is, now that we recognize the dip, we described it, we gave examples of the dip, and that's just before you're starting. And we talked a bit about the dip along the journey, which Dr. Jatan did a phenomenal job about receiving her doctoral degree and having to defend her dissertation. That's along the journey of the dip and understanding, like, what do I do? I'm in the thick of it, right? I may not have really calculated things correctly. Now I'm in the depth of my dip. You know, what do I do then? And I'd like for Dr. Jatan to build on that. What do I do then if I'm in the depth of my of the dip? I didn't do the proper due diligence up front. You know, I want to understand, now that I'm here, I have a hard decision to make. How do I go about making the right decision? Since I look back, I paid so much of a price to get to this point, and I see how much ahead is that I'll have to pay to continue forward. What do I do then that I'm in the dip and I'm trying to decide where to go from here?
I say reassess where you are. Again, I don't condone starting something before you do the due diligence, but since you use this example as one that you may not have actually done that work and you're in the heat of it, again, we tend to panic and make irrational decisions once we're in a place that feels deep, that feels low, and we feel hurried to make the decision. So I'd say make sure that you, one, don't panic and really truly step away and do the assessment that you should have done before, even in that moment.
So it's never too late.
It's
to
never too
assess
late, right?
What's going on? So I think it would then be a good practice to start your journey with an assessment and then have periodic assessments as you go through, right? Because you need to always know where you are in reference to your endpoint, right? In relations, you should know how much further I have to go, how much worse could things possibly get, and then the upside as well. Is it possible to turn back, right? Is that something to consider? Should I put things on hold for a brief period? You know, all those things I think come with that point of reflection, in an introspective way, but then also understanding how and when do I reassess where I am today and where I want to be, so that you can make a more informed decision. Because trust me, every step of the way you're going to learn more and more information that you didn't necessarily know before you started. So
not only assessing that, but I say also, again, back to doing your due diligence up front. Really, a part of that due diligence is also getting clear on when you will quit, if you quit. So before you even start, can I deal with this possible dip? Okay. And then also in the dip, is this something that I can truly say that I can overcome?
So you get some people that are more like quick starts. Look, I'll figure my way out on the way through it. You know, and I think this may be a challenge for a certain population of people.
Yeah.
You know, and then with that, you get some that may overanalyze and never get started because now I have to measure dips and dips and dips. And I'm getting too much in the analysis paralysis part. But
I think that's why, you know, like what do I need to entail? What considers a complete assessment before I jump in? Because if you say that's the SWOT analysis, I can identify my threats, so I know where the risks were going to come, where they might happen, like the milestones in the journey, what they look like, and then also saying to myself, okay, if this thing happens, this is the only time that I'm going to quit if one of these three things happen. Other than that, I keep going, so that you don't have to get in the dip. And while in the dip, like my point earlier, you're in a panic and having to make irrational decisions. You've already decided, I'm going to quit if this happened. This is not one of those three things, so I got to keep pushing through.
Yeah, and I think this really going back to a broader point, is just really knowing how to think through things. And there are, I'm sure, several mental models that are out there to help equip anyone to assess whatever that journey that you're looking to embark upon. But having the right mental model to understand those decision points along the way, should they manifest themselves, you'll know which direction to go. So how do you know when it's complete, or how you know when you're there? Incorporate the right framework, the right mental model to help be your guide. Of course, you can always reach out to coaches and things of that nature so that you're fully informed as you start going through the journey, but also as you endure some of the dips within your process. So aside from the dips, right, are there any other challenges that we may face when we're navigating the terrain?
Of any journey?
Yes.
Yes. The other option is, and not to say this is limited to that option, but again, these thoughts are influenced by my engagement with the book. Okay. I like to say engagement because we like to, you know, the book and I, whatever book it is.
You became one?
We become one.
Without me. Okay.
If it's good.
Okay.
I'm sharing it with you now.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, you all heard it, so I'm just going to go with it.
The other option is, if it's not a scenario, experience, journey that entails a dip, it could be one that results in a cul-de-sac. And if you can imagine or know what a cul-de-sac is, say for instance you're driving down this street, you run into that cul-de-sac, what do? You have to pretty much make that U-turn. You circle around and you go back out the way that you came. So it's not the dip that you're going down and swooping up back into the direction of your goal. No, you're swooping around back to where you started.
Now that could be quite deflating to have those on your journey, right? And again, in some cases, if it was a tough relationship or whatever it may be, although it's not ideal, but if I'm able to get back to where I started from, that may be a lifesaver, right? But in some cases, if you're starting a business or if you're looking to go to, continue your education, whatever the example may be, but to experience taking the journey, taking steps, you put in work, and you hit this point at which it shoots you right back out to where you started. Oh yeah, that would absolutely be deflating. And I guess it would be, in your assessment process, you would want to recognize the difference between the two, if they are in your journey or not, right? Before you get started, are those opportunities there? And I think even if they are, it doesn't necessarily mean you don't take the journey. It's just making sure you're equipped and prepared to deal with it. Because in that cul-de-sac, you may have to jump that curve and create your own road and create your own path. That means that road is viewed around for most drivers, but you may have to put a little extra effort in and figure out through this, how do I still and create my own path, a road that hasn't been traveled? And that's where the innovation will come in. But again, I will say that just because these things that we're talking about are there in any journey doesn't necessarily mean if you should prevent yourself, your efforts, your work, or the people you know that are on these journeys. You should prevent any of those things from moving forward. It's just making sure you're prepared and you have the foresight of knowing what are some of the challenges, things that could be in the way.
That's good. Thanks, Pastor. So, so to add on to that just a tad bit, whether you're experiencing a dip or a cul-de-sac, if you are coping, you're better off quitting. And I know we talked about earlier, when should you know to quit or whatever, but just think about this as another reason why. If you feel like you're just going through the motions with either of these, then you might be better off quitting. Maybe it's not the thing that you're really passionate about, that is passionate about as you thought you were. And it's important to be clear that surviving is not succeeding. Just surviving is not succeeding, nor is it, happiness. So that may bring about the thought of, do I need to reassess this because I'm just going through the motions? I'm not even enjoying this journey anymore. So what do I need to do? Do I need to reassess? Did I miss something in my initial assessment, or whatever that may be, for you to determine whether or not you should turn around, quit, drop it? Well
stated. So we talked about the dip, then we talked about the cul-de-sac. So it's just really one, being able to identify and determine, how do I deal with both? But I'm not sure if every journey would have one of those two, right? It could be many other things for other situations and other people. But I think it's important to recognize what are the things that could be in the way, what are the barriers, roadblocks, whatever it may be, as I embark upon this journey. And it's important to assess those before you get started. Again, we will repeat, seek out coaching, assistance, guidance from other people, research, SWOT analysis, the various mental models that are out there. There's so many different tools at your disposal that you can utilize, employ, and invest in to help you along the way.
Okay.
So as they say, you don't have to be great to get started, but you have to get started to be great.
I think you did that to me last week when we were about to close out, and you you're going to get a little
I
more
don't know
in
what
there.
you're talking about.
See, you
I
never
wouldn't dare
do. You always
anything.
do me that. You always do me that when we are recording.
Oh,
But
boy.
I know you all, if you were listening, you surely know what I am talking about. So before we close it out, though, we have our dose of Dorsey.
Oh, that's right.
Are you ready for the dose of Dorsey? You got
Let's do
something
it.
for us?
No, let's see what you got. But I
See?
stay ready.
I just knew it was going to be his time to shine today. So.
All right, so let me see. The dose of the Dorseys for today. I'll tell a quick story, and we'll close out on that.
Okay.
Okay. So, this was like in the late 90s, probably 99, I think. I want to say 99, right before I was getting ready to go off to college. And this was an experience that I've had, fortunately, I've had to have a couple of others similarly afterwards. But this was what I call the second time my dad taught me how to drive, right? And there was a third, but I'll get to that another time. And the first, I would get to that at a different time. But what was so important about this one, this was the second time. And I know you're probably wondering, whoa, man, it took you 3 times to learn how to drive? Well, I was driving different things, right? So this time it was a stick shift. The first time was just a regular automobile that wasn't a standard, it was automatic. So we went to the dealership to pick out a car, and I was off in college. I just had come home, and I needed a car. And at this time, I had something in mind of what I wanted. But the option that I wanted wasn't really available, so my dad said, hey, what do you have that's there? He said, well, we have this, it was a Geo Tracker, stick shift. And my dad said, all right, that'll work. And I looked at him as if he told me that I would never ever drive again, right? I was in shock. But nonetheless, I'm looking at him saying, hey, I can't drive a stick. And he looked at me, and he looked at the dealership representative, said, oh, yes, he can. With so much certainty, as if at that moment, I became the skilled driver of a stick shift, right? And so I started to believe that. At that point, you couldn't have told me I hadn't been anywhere near it, right? So what was interesting about that, I took on the belief that he had in me. I took it on for myself, right? And so that was a real shift in mindset, that he saw something, or he knew something, or he believed something so passionately that I was able to pull his belief into my life that he had for me, and to start taking action a little bit differently. So here's what we did. He said, he told the dealer, give us 5 minutes. We went out to the car, jumped in. He got in the driver's side. We went 1 block. He walked me through every step of the stick shift. This is how you do it. This is first gear. This is what it means. Here's your clutch. Here's how you shift it out. If you hear this, if you're doing this, you know something is going wrong. Try this. We went through it in 1 block, right? Right after that, he got out the car, got in his car, and went home. Told me, now go to it was a place that we went. It was probably about 5 or 6 miles away for insurance. He said, now go get the insurance, come back, drop it off to him, and then come back to the house, and then we'll go for a ride. He left me by myself at that time to drive it. And lo and behold, by the time I made it to the dealership, to the insurance place, to get the insurance and back to pick him up to ride with me, I was like I was an expert, right? And it is just something that simple, something that small, where I had a strong disbelief that I couldn't do it, but with the confidence that he poured into me, right? Because he knew already, he taught me how to drive, period. But it was just now building onto those skills. Now, he taught me in such a good way, and then he entrusted me to go out and do it. And it really worked. It really worked. And not only that, I was able to teach my mom maybe about 6 months to a year later. But I think the power in that, I think the point of the whole story of my dad teaching me how to drive the second time is really, truly having those around you, having those in your life that may see something deeper in you and that can speak that life into you to encourage you, to teach you and show you that in your lowest moments or in your highest moments that you can lean on to continue to propel you in the journey that you're designed to go.
And speaking of journey, thanks for sharing that story, Mr. Dorsey.
Yeah, that was for free.
Since we talked about the dip today, what would you say the dip was in that story?
The dip for me was the point of which, having to accept the fact, one, that I'm getting this car. I mean, it was a real low moment at that in my mind before he told me I could, right? The second
Meaning
part,
you didn't know if you were going to?
I didn't know if I was going to. I didn't know if I was capable.
Mm-hmm.
That was a low moment. And then being left in that car by myself.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I'm not just going to paint this rosy picture as if I jumped in and vroom, it went on, right? No, there was a couple hiccups, a couple things I had to learn and had to feel for. But by the time he and I rode together, it was just like I had been driving for some time. So I was able to fight through it and endure it.
Good.
Yeah.
It wasn't just coping, you weren't just surviving, but you were...
Because I wanted it, right? This is what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I needed transportation in college,
mm-hmm.
and I was willing to put in that work and learn and figure it out. So I paid attention to him teach me like none other.
Gotcha.
Right? And so I was able to mimic, and after a while of being able to mimic some of the things he did, I was able to develop my own flow, my own feel.
Yeah.
Right?
That's good. Well, there you have it. Dip, baby, dip. Dip, baby, dip. Come on now. Dip, baby, dip.
I don't know. Where are we going now?
Nevertheless, you have tuned in to yet another day with the Dorseys where we talked about the dip and we close this thing out with a dose of Dorsey. So you just got a plate full today. So I hope you enjoyed it. I know we did. And we look forward to the next episode because it's just going to continue to be hot like fire.
Okay, I like that. Whatever you did on that fire part, that was pretty cool. I mean, that was dope.
That was in the name of Aaliyah.
Yeah,
that was one of her songs. Yeah.
I think she just channeled some something
She
through
just
you.
came
I don't
through me,
understand.
right? So again, before we close out here, make sure you do go like, love, download, share, all that good stuff. The podcast, you can find us wherever podcasts are broadcast, and make sure that you also connect with us on social media on Instagram and Facebook at Dem Darn Dorseys and at Date with the Dorseys. And then finally, you can email us at support@fortuneenterprise.com. And again, that's spelled IVTUNE, enterprise.com. So, with that being said, thank you for tuning in. And until next time, bye for now.
Bye.
Develop a fortune state of mind. Time for a date with. A date with the Dorseys.